He laughed while signing the divorce papers, thinking I'd be walking away broke and broken. Stay with me as I tell you what really happened. If my story means something to you, don't forget to like, share, or subscribe. It helps more than you know. I sat there in that courtroom, staring straight ahead, while Brad leaned back in his chair like he'd just won a prize. His new girlfriend, Samantha, rested her head on his shoulder like this was some kind of romantic movie. She was maybe 10 years younger than me, with perfectly curled hair and a look that said she thought she was better than everyone else. I didn't look at either of them. I didn't need to. The judge shuffled papers. My lawyer, Mr. Whitmore, gave me a calm nod. I didn't nod back. I just breathed. Brad laughed quietly as he signed the divorce documents, muttering something under his breath about how I'd probably cry all the way home with nothing but my purse and a few houseplants. Samantha giggled. He really believed it. He truly thought I had nothing. After 17 years together, he thought I'd walk away with $0 and zero fight. But what Brad didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I wasn't the same woman who used to cry quietly when he came home late. I wasn't the woman who used to beg him to stay for dinner, or the one who used to feel like she had to shrink herself to keep peace in the house. That woman had quietly disappeared over the past year. The truth is, I had watched Brad change slowly over the year. At first it was just little things, missed anniversaries, cold shoulders, jokes that cut a little too deep. Then came the cheating, the lies, the nights he didn't come home at all. And every time, he made me feel like I was the crazy one, like I was the problem. But I'm an accountant. Numbers don't lie. People do. So while Brad was busy pretending I didn't matter, I was watching, learning, saving. I knew exactly what he was doing with his money, and I knew he was hiding things. I just let him think I didn't notice. I played quiet. I played small. Until today. He thought this divorce would be the final punchline. He thought I'd sign the papers, walk away, and disappear into some lonely little apartment. But the judge was about to speak, and Brad was about to realize I wasn't the one walking away with nothing. He was. It was our 17th wedding anniversary. I remember lighting the candles on the table, carefully folding the napkin, and setting out Brad's favorite steak dinner. I had even worn the perfume he once said reminded him of the night we got engaged. I waited for him until the food went cold. He never showed up. I sat at that table for 2 hours, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and staring at the door, hoping he'd walk in with an apology and maybe a simple bouquet. But there was nothing. No call. No text. Just silence. The next morning, I woke up early. Brad was already in the shower, humming like everything was fine. I wanted to scream, to ask him where he was, but something inside me stopped. Instead, I went downstairs, opened his jacket pocket like I'd done so many times before to toss it in the wash. And that's when I found it. A folded receipt from a fancy hotel downtown. 2 drinks, dinner, and 1 overnight stay. I held the paper in my hand, heart pounding, but face still calm. I didn't ask him anything. I just tucked it into my drawer and went on making his breakfast like I always had. That was the day something inside me shifted. For 17 years, I had let things go. The late nights, the cold shoulders, the text messages he claimed were work stuff. I had always trusted, forgiven, or blamed myself. But now I saw it for what it was. I wasn't blind. I was just tired of pretending. So I started writing everything down. I made copies of receipts. I checked bank statements. I kept screenshots of strange messages I'd find when his phone lit up on the kitchen counter. I noticed how his behavior changed, how he laughed more at his phone than at anything I said, how he came home smelling like a different soap, how he started locking his phone, something he never did before. But this time I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't ask him why. I chose silence, but not because I was scared. This time, silence was my strategy. I decided I wouldn't give him a chance to lie anymore. I would collect the truth, one small piece at a time. Because if Brad wanted to treat our 17 years like they meant nothing, then I would show him what it looked like when I stopped pretending they still did. I wasn't supposed to be home that early. My dentist appointment had ended ahead of schedule, and I thought I'd surprise Brad with coffee from the little shop he liked. I remember walking through the front door, still numb from the anesthesia, expecting to find an empty house. Instead, I heard humming, and the sound of a spatula hitting a pan. I stepped into the kitchen, and there she was, a woman I had never seen before, barefoot, wearing my apron, scrambling eggs like she belonged there. She looked up at me, smiled politely, and said, "Oh, hey, hey." I couldn't speak. My eyes went to the pan, then to the apron, then to her chipped red toenail polish. My apron, my kitchen, my home. Brad came strolling in from the hallway, still wet from a shower. He looked at me like I was the one intruding. "Oh, Emily, you're home early." I said nothing. My throat was tight. My hands shook slightly, but I kept my face calm. Samantha, he finally said, was just a friend crashing for a few days. Said it like it was normal, like it didn't mean anything, like she wasn't standing in the home I had built for 17 years. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I didn't tell him how deeply it burned to see her using my favorite mug, the one Brad got me for our 10th anniversary. I just walked out of the kitchen and sat down in the living room, hands folded, heart pounding. That evening, I opened a new notebook and wrote down everything. She used my apron, my mug. She acted like she lived here. And Brad just let her. It felt good to write it. Safer than shouting. Safer than crying. My pain had lived in my heart for too long. Now it had somewhere else to go. I filled 3 pages that night. I wrote down the way Brad smirked when he said her name. I wrote down what she was wearing. I even described the eggs, slightly overcooked with too much pepper. It all mattered now. Then I got in my car and drove to a nearby storage facility. I rented a small unit under my maiden name. I started moving out small valuables. My grandmother's jewelry, family photo albums, the important documents Brad never cared to look at. Little by little, I would remove the pieces of myself from the home that no longer felt like mine. The next day, I searched for a private investigator. I wanted the truth, cold and undeniable. If Brad was willing to bring another woman into my home without blinking, then I needed to know everything. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to ask him to choose me. I had already made my choice. And this time it was me. The folder the investigator handed me was thick. I sat at the kitchen table, fingers trembling slightly as I flipped through the document. At first, I didn't even understand what I was looking at. Business registrations, account statements, wire transfers. Then I saw it. My name, used as a registered co-owner of a side business I knew nothing about. My social security number, my forged signature. He hadn't just lied, he had committed fraud. Using me. The business itself was shady. Construction supplies, but not licensed properly. Money moved in and out in strange amounts. Some deposits from our joint account, some from credit lines opened under my name. My stomach turned. And then came the cherry on top, Samantha. A background check revealed she had a criminal record. Petty theft, fraud, identity misrepresentation. She'd done this before. I sat in silence for a long time that night, the folder still open in front of me. A part of me wanted to scream. Another part, stronger, just sat still, focused, clear. The next morning, I made an appointment with a lawyer, Ben Whitmore, a quiet man with silver-rimmed glasses and the kind of voice that made you feel like everything would be okay. Eventually, he had been recommended by a friend at the accounting firm I used to work for. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt. Just listened, took notes, and asked a few sharp questions. When I showed him the documents from the investigator, he leaned back in his chair and simply said, "You have a case, Emily. A strong one. Fraud, financial misrepresentation, marital theft." Ben explained each one carefully, in plain language. He outlined a plan, one that wouldn't just expose Brad, but protect me in the process. The timing, he said, was everything. We weren't going to rush. I wasn't going to explode in anger. We'd move quietly, piece by piece, until everything was ready, until there would be no room left for denial. That night, I walked into the bedroom and looked at Brad sleeping soundly beside me, as if he hadn't betrayed me in every possible way. He thought I was blind, powerless, just some quiet woman too weak to fight back. But he didn't know I had already started. And when the time came, I wouldn't just walk away. I'd make sure he watched me do it, with everything he thought I didn't have. Brad stopped pretending. He'd walk into the kitchen while I was chopping vegetables and slap Samantha's hip as she leaned over the counter. He'd laugh loudly, joke about real women, and how they knew how to keep a man happy. He started ignoring me completely unless he needed a shirt ironed or a signature on something. I was no longer a wife. I was just there. At first, it hurt. I'd cry in the shower, where no one could hear. But soon, the tears dried up, and something colder, steadier settled in. I started becoming smaller on purpose. I made dinner, cleaned quietly, kept my head down. Brad loved feeling in control, and I let him believe it. He thought I was broken, powerless. He'd walk past me on the phone with Samantha, saying disgusting things, not even lowering his voice. The truth was, I'd never been clearer. One evening, I pulled out an old shoebox from the top of my closet. Inside were papers my father had handed me before he passed, bank letters, bonds, stock statements. Nothing massive, but it was something. I had never touched it. But now I needed it. Quietly, I moved everything online. I transferred the bonds into an investment account under my name only. I read books, watched videos, and taught myself how to manage it. Every time Brad laughed at me or talked about how stupid I was, I'd open my laptop and move a little more money into the right places. I watched the balance grow. It was slow at first, $38,000, then $52,000, then $103,000. Months passed. While Brad was out at dinners and pretending to be some successful alpha male, I was building something behind the curtain. I cashed out a life insurance policy he forgot I had. I sold old jewelry my mother had given me. I even took on quiet freelance accounting work at night while they were watching TV downstairs. Every penny went into the same account. By the time winter came, the balance hit $470,000. He never noticed. He still tossed dirty laundry at my feet and called me boring. He still rolled his eyes when I spoke and treated me like wallpaper. But what he didn't realize was, he wasn't making me smaller. I was shrinking myself for a reason, hiding in plain sight, growing in silence. He thought I had nothing, that I was dependent on him, stuck with no options. But soon, he'd find out that the woman he walked over wasn't invisible. She was watching, waiting, and she was about to leave with more than he ever imagined. I sat across from Brad at the kitchen table one evening, hands folded, eyes calm. I told him I thought we should try counseling, that maybe we could fix what was broken. He laughed in my face. Counseling? For what? You're the one with the issues. Go fix yourself. I nodded slowly, pretending to absorb his words like I always did. But inside, I felt nothing. No sting. No anger. Just confirmation. That night, while he slept beside Samantha in our bedroom, I packed a small suitcase, took my toothbrush, and quietly closed the front door behind me. I didn't even look back. The next morning, I filed the papers with a smile. My lawyer, Ben, handed me the forms, and I signed each one with a steady hand. 17 years of marriage, done in 17 pages. The official court date was set. Brad was served while drinking beer on the porch. He texted me 2 words. You're nuts. Then came the stories. He told our friends that I'd had a breakdown, that I was broke, that I'd probably walk away with her handbag and maybe the cat. I heard it all through mutuals. He was having fun with it, playing the big man who dumped the boring wife. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't explain. I didn't post on social media. I just kept working with Ben, pulling together my files. Every transfer, every investment account, every document I'd saved. The notebook filled with details about Brad's behavior, his side business, even Samantha's criminal record. I was ready. The morning of court, I wore a navy blue dress. Simple, sharp. I stood in the hallway outside the courtroom, calm. Brad strolled in 15 minutes late, grinning. Samantha was with him, chewing gum and wearing sunglasses indoors. Ready to lose everything? Brad smirked. I smiled politely. Let's see. What he didn't know, what he never cared to know, was that I'd spent the last year building my side of the story. While he laughed and bragged, I had quietly gathered every thread. Financial misrepresentation, marital theft, fraud. And the judge was about to see all of it. Brad thought he was in control. He thought I was weak. But I hadn't walked away. I'd walked ahead. And I was about to show him exactly what silence can build. Brad walked into that courtroom like it was a joke. He winked at Samantha, whispered something smug to his lawyer, and plopped down in the chair like he owned the place. He didn't even glance at me. To him, I was still the same quiet, invisible wife, the woman who folded his laundry and stayed silent while he played king in our home. He'd told everyone he was the breadwinner, that I had no income, no assets, and no clue how the world worked. His statement to the court claimed I'd be walking away with next to nothing. He even wrote, "She's lucky I supported her this long." I sat beside my lawyer, Ben Whitmore, calm as ever. Then Ben stood up, buttoned his jacket, and handed the judge a folder. "Your Honor, these are the financial disclosures and supporting evidence from my client, Mrs. Carter." The judge opened it. For a moment, there was silence. No one moved. Then the judge raised his eyes. "Mrs. Carter, is this accurate?" I nodded. "Yes, sir." He looked at Brad. "Mr. Carter, did you have knowledge of these accounts and assets?" Brad squinted. "What accounts?" Ben turned to him. "The $670,000 in independent investments. The 3 rental properties under Mrs. Carter's name. And the evidence showing you opened a business account under her social security number without her consent." The color drained from Brad's face. Samantha shifted beside him, arms crossed, still trying to roll her eyes. But the judge wasn't done. "There is documentation here that suggests potential fraud, misuse of identity, and financial manipulation. I am suspending these proceedings until a formal investigation can be completed. Mr. Carter, you may be contacted by authorities regarding this matter." Brad's mouth opened slightly, like he was about to argue, but nothing came out. His lawyer leaned in and started whispering frantically. For the first time in years, Brad wasn't smirking. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, steady. Because this wasn't revenge for me, it was truth. It was 17 years of being ignored, belittled, and used, finally laid out in black and white. A balance sheet that spoke louder than anything I could ever say. Outside the courtroom, Samantha hissed, "You think money makes you smart?" I looked her in the eye. "No, but hiding it does." I walked away, not because I was angry, but because I didn't owe him or her another second. He thought I'd be empty, but I was always full, just quiet. And now the silence had spoken. Brad thought he could lie his way through everything, like he always had. In court, after the judge brought up the fraud and suspended the proceedings, Brad tried to backpedal. I didn't know those accounts were in her name. I never used her information. The judge looked at him coldly. Are you denying your involvement, Mr. Carter? Brad nodded quickly. Yes, absolutely. I didn't open anything. That's when I quietly reached into my folder. Ben, my lawyer, stood and handed the judge a new set of documents. Your Honor, these are original copies of the business registration forms, the bank account applications, and several contracts, all signed using Mrs. Carter's name. The judge scanned them briefly, then raised an eyebrow. These appear to be forged signatures. Ben continued, calm and firm. You'll also find notarized versions. Emily kept copies. We've had them verified. The notary who handled them is ready to testify that Mr. Carter signed these himself, while pretending to be his wife. Brad's lawyer looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Brad stood up. Wait, this is being taken out of context. The judge cut him off. Mr. Carter, I suggest you remain silent until legal counsel advises you. These matters are now outside the scope of divorce and may involve criminal investigation. Brad sat down again, this time pale and sweating. After the session ended, in the hallway outside the courtroom, Samantha yanked her purse off her shoulder and threw it at Brad's chest. You told me she was dumb, she snapped. You said she had nothing. I didn't think, Brad started, reaching for her arm. She backed away. No, Brad, you didn't think. And now you're going to jail. I'm not sticking around for this mess. She walked away in heels that clicked louder than her words. Brad turned to me. Emily, please can we just talk? Just for a second. I looked at him, but I didn't speak. Not a word. I just stared, and then walked away. That silence, it was everything. Because now Brad wasn't just losing the house, the assets, and his reputation. He was facing a lawsuit. He was facing criminal charges. And the woman he thought would crawl away broken? She walked out taller than ever. The paperwork didn't just prove what he did. It proved he never really knew who I was. The first morning in my new house by the lake, I didn't wake up with joy or triumph. I just woke up and breathed. The air smelled like pine and water. There was no yelling in the hallway, no doors slamming, no pretending. Just quiet. Not the kind of quiet I used to live in, that sharp, lonely silence filled with tension. This was different. This was peace. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat on the porch, and listened to the birds. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to rush. No one was watching me, waiting to dismiss my thoughts or twist my words. I could just exist. A few weeks later, Ben, my lawyer, called. Brad pleaded out, he said. No jail time, but he lost the company. Fined heavily. He's done. I didn't feel happy. Just relieved. There were no fireworks, no revenge celebration. I didn't want that. I didn't want to become someone who lived off the pain that man caused. What I wanted was a life he couldn't touch. One he never believed I was strong enough to build. I donated a portion of the divorce settlement to a women's legal defense fund. I knew too many women who were still stuck, still being told they were imagining things, still being silenced. My sister Rachel runs a nonprofit that helps women in difficult marriages. I started volunteering with her, speaking in small groups, sharing what I'd learned. Not as a victim, not even as a survivor, just as a woman who made it out. One night, after talking to a young woman with the same tired look I used to wear, I went home and opened my journal. I wrote, peace was never about silence. It was about knowing I wasn't crazy after all. For years, Brad made me doubt myself. Every question I asked, every gut feeling I had, he twisted it. Made me feel like I was overreacting, like I was hard to love, like I was lucky he stayed. But now I know better. I wasn't broken. I was being broken, slowly, quietly. And I put myself back together in silence, one brave choice at a time. Today, I don't need applause or attention. I just need mornings like this. A hot cup of coffee, a quiet porch, the sound of water nearby. That's what freedom looks like. And Brad, he never saw it coming, because he never saw me clearly to begin with. The bell above the cafe door jingled softly as someone walked in. I didn't look up at first. I was too deep into my book, Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud. Fitting, really. Life had come full circle. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind I loved. Just the sound of spoons clinking on coffee cups, soft music playing, and the occasional laughter from the barista behind the counter. I had no idea that today would be the day I saw him again. Brad. I looked up when I felt a pause in the room. My eyes met his, only for a second. He stood frozen, wearing a wrinkled delivery uniform, a clipboard in hand. The smirk he used to wear so confidently was gone. His shoulders slumped slightly, his face thinner, older somehow. Life hadn't been kind to him. He looked down at the book in my hand. I saw the recognition flicker in his eyes, maybe even a touch of shame. He opened his mouth like he was about to say something, but I didn't let it land. I calmly smiled, closed my book, and stood up. My tea was paid for. I thanked the waitress, grabbed my coat, and walked right past him. Not a word, not a glance back. He stood there, stuck in that moment. And I kept walking, because I had nothing to prove anymore. Once upon a time, his words could crush me. His silence could twist me into knots. His laughter made me feel small, like I didn't matter. He thought I was weak because I didn't fight back loudly, because I stayed quiet, because I didn't scream when he cheated or yell when he lied. But he mistook my silence for surrender. It wasn't. It was power being saved for the right moment. It was strength being built, one day at a time. And now, I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. I just needed peace. And I had it. He laughed when he thought I had nothing. But I had something he'll never get back, myself. What would you have done if you were in Emily's shoes? Walked away like she did, or given him another chance? I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if these kinds of powerful stories speak to you, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next.